the throne. I'm crown taking, I'm about to make the ground shake.
Hey, Inside Out, how y'all doing? All right, that wasn't bad, but here's what I want you to do. I'm so glad you guys are here, and I want you to turn to your neighbor, and on the count of three, I need you to yell, you're glad that they're there on the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There you go. Turn to your other neighbor. Be glad they're here too. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. That's so much better. Well, hey, if we haven't met, my name is Darren, and I'm so excited you're here hanging out with us. If it's your very first time with us, we hope you love this place, hope you want to come back, and eventually hope you want to bring your friends with you as well. We've designed Inside Out for you and your friends, and I'm super excited about what we're talking about tonight. We're in a series we're calling Watch the Throne, and to kind of get us started real quick, I don't know if you've ever had one. I think you've probably all had an experience like this. Have you ever been hanging out with your friends, and one of your friends goes, I have a really good idea? And then you're like, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, let's do that. And then that idea just starts to like snowball and it just escalates really quick. And the next thing you know, you're missing toenails. Like, you ever had one of those situations where it's like, that was a really good idea. And how did we end up here? What happened? And I don't know about you, but I have a lot of stories like that. And I'll never forget one time when I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how old I was. This feels like one of those stories that should, like, when I was in 6th grade, but I was a freshman in college, okay? And I'll never forget, we were hanging out with a group of friends, and one of them was like, hey, I got a really good idea. Tomorrow, let's go whitewater rafting. Have you ever been whitewater rafting? This right here? Anyone ever done that? Yeah. It looks fun. They're having a lot of fun. She's peeing on everyone right now. They have no idea. But whitewater rafting is a lot of fun, and I was like, that sounds great. Let's go tomorrow. And another one of my friends was like, that's kind of expensive. Like, can we not do that? Can we instead do this? Can we go tubing down a river? I mean, anyone done that? Yeah, you can just pee on yourself for hours. No one even knows. It's awesome. But that was like, okay, we could do that. We've all done that, and we'll go do that. And another one of my friends is like, okay, but I don't want to do the Chattahoochee. That's kind of lame, and you're going to grow like another arm. Okay, let's not do that. Instead, he was like, let's go to North Georgia, and we'll just find a river, and we'll just get down it. We'll just go to Walmart and buy some pool floats. So we were like, all right, cool. So we wake up the next morning, we get in a car, there's 5 of us, we get in my buddy's car, we start driving north, we hit a Walmart, and we buy a pool float that looks like this right here. Yeah, it's got great lumbar support and a great, it's got a cup holder right there. And so we get a bunch of these, and we drive up to Amicaloa Creek. I don't know if you know about that place. It's not that far from here over in Dawsonville. We get there, we park in the parking lot, and I need you to picture 5 19-year-old kids in their flip-flops, bathing suits, pumping up these in the parking lot. And we find this parking lot, and we're like, we're going to go, and this older man comes walking by us as we're pumping up our pool floats. And you ever felt when someone's just like really awkwardly close to you and just staring? And I remember like we're there, and we're pumping up our pool floats, and I turn, and there's this older gentleman, and he's just looking at us like, what are y'all doing? We're like, is everything okay? And he goes, what are y'all doing with those? Like, we're going down the river. I mean, what do you think we're doing with them? He's like, that river over there? We're like, yeah, we drove all the way up here to go down the river. What are you talking about? And he goes, have you ever done that before? And one of my friends goes, I've done it 100 times, which is, now I found out later, is a lie. He's never done this before in his life. And the guy's like, okay, I'm not sure I would do that if I were you guys. And we're like, dude, it's fine. Just leave us alone. It'll be great. And he goes, all right, well, this I got to see. And it was in that moment that I was like, maybe I should just hang out with the old guy that I don't know. Like, I don't think we should do this. And we all grab our floats, and we go down to the water. And when we get down there, there's like all these kids like playing in like little water, and they're throwing the ball for their like dogs. And it's like a really cool. And so in our minds, like, it's just going to be a great little day floating down the river. And as we get down there, he's like elbowing his friends, and he's pointing at us as we're getting in the water. And someone reaches and gets a camcorder. Y'all don't know what that is, but it used to be a video camera not attached to your phone. And they would get it, and they were just filming us going down the river. And as we're floating by, people were waving at us like we're like astronauts about to fly to space for the first time. And I'm like, should I go kiss my family, or am I made up? Like, I don't have a family yet. I'm 19, but I'll go kiss somebody, It's like, so I'm like, should I do that? And anyway, so we get in there, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like this might be a bad choice. But we start going, the weather's beautiful, and we're floating down this river. It's barely moving. And in that moment, we decide there's one rule as a group of friends that we're going to have for this adventure we're about to go on. That rule is, if you see a snake, don't say anything. Okay, so if you see a snake, just pretend like you didn't see it and move on. I'm like, got it, cool, locked up, I won't do anything, okay? And so we make that rule, and as we're going down, my friend Gio, I'm not even sure what his real name is, we'll just call him Gio, and he put his hands behind his bed. I just realized he's got a weird name. Sorry if your name's Gio, I love your name. Put his hands behind his head, right? And he goes, I really needed this. And at the end of that sentence, just around the river bend, we could hear this rumble, this roar that was beginning to get louder and louder with every passing second. And I will never forget, it is etched in my brain when we turned that corner and we saw this right here. We saw whitewater rapids and drop downs like that. And for the next 3 hours, we were faced with this and we just kept powering through. At one point, one of the pull floats busted, and then you had two dudes just riding tandem on a pull float. And we were just, it was awful. It's one of the worst experiences of my life. And we just kept going. We decided, we drove up here, we're gonna do it. At some point, I lost a fingernail. My friend lost a toenail. We were all bleeding. We had flip-flops on. We took those off, put them on as gloves so we can brace ourselves against the rocks. And it was an awful experience. One of my friends at some point lost an eyebrow. How'd that happen? I don't know. It's still floating down the river. It's disgusting. But the reality is, I will never forget, we came to this one spot and it's like a fork in the river. And this side is a bunch of whitewater rapids and some drop downs. And they all go that way. But if I look to the right, it's like this slow moving, it just kind of drops down and I'm like, I'll go that way. So I get over there, right? And I get over there with my flip-flops, and there's this big boulder, and as I'm coming over this, I'm watching them, and they're just getting beat. Their floats are down there, and they're over here, and I'm like, sucks for them. And I'm over here, and there's this big boulder, and I push off the boulder, and when I do, something slivers in the corner of my eye. Yeah, I know. And when I turn, there's a snake, and it goes under my pull float, right? Like that. And in that moment, I knew we had a rule. But I'll let you know right now, if there's a snake between me and my kids, I am kicking my kids out of the way, and I am running the other direction. In that moment, all I did was yell, snake! And I can't see them anymore, but from the other side of the river, I just hear, dude, we had a rule! And they're over there bleeding. I'm like, I don't care about the rule. So I come down. Eventually, we make our way through this river, and 3 hours later, we're like, we should probably head back. And now it's wait, we didn't think of a plan on how to get back. Now we got to walk all the way up the riverbed, all the way up in our wet flip-flops. You ever tried to walk in flip-flops? It's like doing a handstand on ice. It's terrible. And we just squeaked all the way back. Just eat. And we were arguing with each other. And eventually one of my friends, as we're arguing on our way back to the car, one of our friends says this right here. He said, why? We should have listened to that man in the parking lot. Now, if you go home and tell your parents what we talk about inside out, they told us to talk to people in parking lots. We did not say that. This is not generally good advice. But in that moment, we should have listened to that old man in the parking lot. But we didn't. Because in that moment, what that old man said and what we wanted to do didn't line up. And I would imagine that there are moments in your life, like there's moments in my life, where someone gives us some advice and we hear the advice, we're like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and you're probably right, but it's not what I want you to say, and it's not what I want to hear. And so what do we do in those moments? We go and find someone else to give us advice. Because all of us in this room, we know this to be true right here. We can always find someone to say what we want to hear. What we want to hear is here, but what other people are saying, well, we'll just keep looking until the people around us say exactly what we want them to say. And the reality is, all of us in this room, at some point, you've experienced that. I would imagine for some of you in the room, you think of a conversation you had with a friend or a small group leader or a parent where they were saying, hey, if I were you, I don't think I'd hang out with that group anymore. Or if I were you, I think I would maybe hang out with a different group and go find some new friends. Or maybe for some of you, someone has told you at a different point in your life that maybe you shouldn't date him or date her, or maybe you shouldn't smoke that thing anymore. Maybe you shouldn't drink that anymore. You definitely shouldn't sleep with them, right? And people start giving you some advice, and you're like, yeah, you're right, I probably shouldn't, but that's not what I want to hear. And so what do? We just keep asking around until we find someone who tells us what we want to hear. Now, if you've ever done that, which I would imagine all of us at some point have, because I know you have, because I've done that. And your small group leaders have probably done that. Now, if you've done that before, you're in the right place tonight. Because that's what we're going to talk about. In fact, we're going to look at a king, because all series long, we're looking at some historical kings that we can look at their story and learn some things that they did right and some things they did wrong. And maybe we can avoid some of the mistakes and learn from some of their mistakes. In fact, last week, Beth kind of kicked us off talking about this guy right here, David. Now, David was a shepherd. You kind of know the story, and some of you might know the story. If you don't know the story, you need to go read it. It's fascinating. But he starts off as a shepherd, and eventually he becomes the king of Israel, and eventually he does die, and his son Solomon takes over, and Solomon becomes king. Solomon is considered to be one of the wisest men to have ever lived on the planet. A lot of the stuff he said was written down. You can learn it. There's wisdom in there, and he's a really, really wise. He was actually a very well-respected king as well. I mean, the kingdom of Israel under his reign, they expanded their territory like crazy. They were at peace. They were at prosperity. When people looked around, they were like, man, King Solomon did a pretty good job. But eventually he dies and his son takes over. And that's King Rehoboam. And when he takes over, everyone kind of looks at what King Solomon did and they're like, that was great. We liked him. We respected him. But all this expansion and all this prosperity came at a cost. And we're tired. And they asked him this question, can we just take a break? Like from all this expansion, and we love it. We like that we're kind of rich right now. We like that there's kind of peace, but man, can we just take a step back and chill for a second? Because this has kind of cost us a lot. There was moments that some people probably would say it was harsh under King Solomon. So they asked King Rehoboam, can we do something differently? And what happens next, I think you and I can learn from, because I think if we get this right, it can be a game changer for you, not only in high school, but all the way through college and into your life as well. Check this out. This is what happens. It says King Rehoboam consulted the elders. So these people were the people that were with King Solomon. So the people that spent their time hanging out with King Solomon, I bet the best way to kind of put it would be that these guys had been there and done that. This was the wisdom in the kingdom. They had been there for the entire reign. It says they served as King Solomon during his entire lifetime. So when King Rehoboam comes up, who's a young leader, he's wise in going, hey, you know what? I should probably ask the people that have been there and done that. So he says, what would you say to these people? And he goes on to say this. He says, how would you advise me to answer these people? He asks. So he wants their advice, which is a really good thing. And he goes on. He says, they replied, the elders, the people had been there, done that. They were a little bit older than him. They had some more life experience. He says, if today you will be a servant, now he's talking to a king, if you will take the posture of caring about these people, if you will take the posture of listening to these people, if you would take the posture that's different than most kings and serve these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, meaning kind of lean in their direction, listen to what they're requesting of you, if you'll do that, they will always be your servants. And as a king, that's what you would want. So the easiest way to put it is when he asked them, this is kind of what they said. If you do all this, if you lean in their direction, then you won't regret it. This is a win-win. And for us, several thousand years later, when we hear that, we're like, that's clearly the right choice. He has to listen to these advisors, to these elders. That's the right choice. But what Rehoboam does is exactly what you and I have done on occasion. He hears that and hears it, but it doesn't quite line up with what he wants to hear. So he goes and gets advice from someone else. And check out what happens next. This is amazing. He goes to the young men who had grown up with him. In other words, his friends. Now, the rest of this talk is not, don't listen to your friends, okay? So to get that out of your mind. Some of your friends have a lot of really good advice. Some of them don't. And in this moment, we're going to learn that these ones didn't. So you got people who have been there and done that, or the people that he grew up with, and this is what they say to him. This is what they replied. It says, these people have said to you, your fathers put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Meaning, can we chill out a little bit? Like, it was really hard with him. Can you make it easier on us? And he goes on to say, this group of men says, I got an idea. This is, as king, you go tell him this. And this is what they say. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. This is the advice he's getting. They are asking for it to be easier. Well, let's double down. They think that was bad. Watch this. And then they double down on that and they go, here's what we really want you to tell them is my father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. Now, that's a weird word, but that really just means another type of whip where they would get sharp metal pieces, and they would sew them to the end of the whip. So when you would whip someone, it would latch on to their backs, the flesh of their back. And when they would pull that whip back off, it would pull flesh back off. So what he's saying is, okay, they want it to be easier, but as their king, make it way worse. Show them your power. And in that moment, Rehoboam experiences what you and I experience when we ask people for advice. He experiences two different groups of people. He experiences a group of people that's going to tell them what you need to hear, and a group of people that tells them what you want to hear. Now, what's interesting about this story is if you fast forward just a couple days, you find out what advice he took. And unfortunately, he took what you want to hear. And within a couple days, there is a military leader that is murdered. There is a new king elected, and civil war breaks out in the kingdom of Israel, all because he listened to the wrong group of people, because you know this to be true. When someone tells you what you need to hear, sometimes it hurts, but when we listen to what people and do what people say when they say what we want to hear, man, on the other side of that is typically some regret, typically some shame, typically some pain, typically some suffering, typically some, I wish I could go back and change that. Typically some, oh, if I had to just listen to the right group of people, if I had to just listen to that old man in the parking lot, I wouldn't be missing a fingernail. But all of us in this room, if we choose this one, it's always going to be better. But if we choose this one, there's going to be some pain along the way. But here's the good news. So you get to make the choice. In fact, what's interesting about this is that Rehoboam's dad was considered to be the wisest person ever lived. In fact, this is one of the things that he wrote. Check this out. This is crazy. It says, let the wise listen, meaning you have a choice. Let them listen and add to their learning. Let the discerning get guidance. Hey, if you want to make wise choices in your life, if you want to end up down the road with less regret, less I wish I could go back, less I wish I had never have done that, then listen to wise people. You have a choice. So if you don't remember anything else we talked about tonight, here's what I would love for you to walk away with, and it's this right here. Is wisdom is always worth listening to. And when we read that, it's like a, yeah, duh. But too often, if we're honest, we don't listen to people who are wise. So the question for you tonight is this right here is, do I have wise people in my life? I would argue you do. I would encourage you to look around at the adults in the room. What you get to experience in Inside Out is very unique. You have a group of adults that have said yes to hang out with you every single Sunday, go to camp with you, not just for like a camp, not just for like a Sunday or a semester, but for 4 years. They're the only group of people in your life that is here voluntarily. Your coaches have to be there. Your teachers have to be there. Your parents kind of have to be there. But man, these small group leaders in this room, they don't have to be here, and they're choosing to be because they have some life experience, and you should be asking them about it. So do you have wise people in your life? Absolutely you do. But then you got to ask the question, am I listening to them? Are you listening to your small group leaders? Are you listening to the wisdom in your life? Maybe it is your parents, maybe it is your coaches, but are you willing to listen to them? Because the reality is those people that are wise in your life are probably going to be the people who are going to say what you need to hear, and it might hurt in the moment, but it's going to end up less painful in the future for you. So are you willing to listen to them, and am I willing to put what they say into practice? It's one thing to listen. It's another thing to do what the wisdom in your life is telling you to do. So in group, that's what you guys are going to talk about tonight, and I'm so excited about your small group. And I would encourage you tonight to look at your small group leader and start asking them some hard questions. And maybe you should look at your leader at some point and say, hey, thanks for being my small group leader. I'm so glad you're in my life. Let me pray for you guys. We'll get you to small group. God, we love you. God, thank you so much for this group of people. Thank you for Inside Out, the place we get to come to every Sunday night. And we get to talk about our faith. We get to ask questions. We get to talk about what's really going on in our lives. And God, I just pray that we realize that there's a group of people here that we can ask questions to, that we can seek wisdom from. And I just pray that as we kind of figure out this thing in high school and life and dating and relationships and sports and everything that we do and all the things we spend our time in, I pray that we seek people who are wise, that can help us understand the best decisions to make for the little amount of regret in the future. God, we love you. We're so grateful for you sending Jesus to be our Savior. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys are awesome. Thanks for being here. Y'all are dismissed. And have a great group. Sign up for IO weekend. You don't want to miss it.